Hello, I'm Jan Porter, and today I'm on the Warwickshire Avon at Twyford Farm, where I'm going to be looking at pole fishing, particularly on the river as I'm sat on the riverbank. The peg we've chosen is peg 23, and this is a couple of pegs away from one of the most noted bream pegs on the whole of the Twyford length. So hopefully we might get amongst a few of them, but it's never guaranteed with bream fishing. There's lots of things to discuss about pole fishing, but before I go down to the nitty-gritty, I want to have a look at the revolution that's occurred in English match fishing and pleasure fishing using the pole over the last 10 years. I'm sure all of you by now will have had a dabble with the pole, and I first started out in about 1977-78 with a 7-metre SLV glass pole, which was the bee's knees in them days. Now, comparing that with today's modern poles that are made out of carbon, it's like a length of bamboo. But at the time they were really good. I went to Ireland in the early 80s and drew next to a lad called Trev Tomlin from Leicester, and he made me fully realise the advantages of using these long carbon poles. Talk about giving me a duffing. He had £90 of big bream at the next peg at Broadmeadow in Northern Ireland, and I had £7 on my little SLV. I knew then I'd got to get a carbon pole. It was only when I won a river championship on the year that I had enough funds to buy one, and I spent £400 of that purse on a 11 metre Pro Carbon made by Daiwa, probably one of the finest poles around at the time. Now, pole fishing's moved on a long way since then, and I've got a selection of poles to show you. This venue at Twyford is ideally suited for pole fishing. There's dace, roach and chub and bream, what I just mentioned, so we'll be getting down to a bit of fishing later. The first pole I'd like to show you, which I won't actually be using today, is called a speed whip. Now, these are made out of very, very light carbon weave, and they're for catching small fish very close to hand, and I normally only use these for bleak fishing and fishing on still waters or canals for gudgeon. The telescopic, that means the sections telescope inside each other, and they're made by an Italian firm called Very. I've got 3 of these ranging from 2 metres up to 4 metres, and they're superb for that kind of work. One that I will be using today, which is a longer version of the speed whip, and is actually what you might call a flick pole, and this is made by another Italian company, probably the best manufacturers of poles at the moment in this variety. This is a 6-metre pole, and because there's a lot of dace showing on the river today, I've set a little tiny bottom end only float up, and if them dace are pestering me on the top, I might just whack that out a few times. Nice soft pole, and fishing on 12-ounce line, you can even get the fish out as big as £2, as long as you play them carefully. On the continent, this is all they use, and they use telescopic poles similar to this up to 11-12 metres. Let's pop that down there. The next one I'm going to show you is the first of 2 take-apart poles. This is a Browning spiral, and it's a push-in pole. And I'll just explain that. The top section pushes in to the next section down, the fatter section if you like. It's a take-apart pole, but it's a pushing pole. It's quite an expensive pole, and it's very, very stiff, and it's got a very, very small diameter. And I'll fish this up to 10 metres to hand. But don't let that confuse you too much, because a lot of fish can be caught fishing 5 to 7 metres to hand. So don't get too carried away thinking that you need to fish 10 metres to hand. Unless you can afford a really expensive pole, then 6 and 7 metres is as long as you're going to be able to cope with anyway. But that one is probably my favourite pole at the moment on the market. And finally, the biggest pole I've got, this is a 13 metre, again a take-apart pole, but the difference between this one and the last one I've shown you is that it's a put-over pole. And can you see the difference? The top section puts over the bottom section. Again, this is an expensive pole, very, very stiff. And the thing is, when you're using these stiff poles, you can't get away with the flick tips like you can on the Continental telescopic ones. They're just a little bit too stiff, and from the flick tip going onto the actual pole, there's a real hard spot, and you can lose fish like that. I'll pop that one down there. Whoops, I caught my first one of the day. Just put the hook in there, get it out of the way. Right, as you can see, surrounding me, I've got all bits and bobs and gizmos, and I want to show you a few of these that I've come across during those 10 years, and things that help me with my fishing. Before I do that, I think I might just show you the top section of the poles that I will be using today, and explain the method of attachment of line. What I use mainly for my fishing, and the fish is just topping here waiting for me now, is what you call internal elastic. Now this, as it says itself, is internal inside the pole. On the end of the pole you'll see a small white bush. This is made out of a material called PTFE, and it's like self-lubricating, and that rubber slides along there quite nicely. The terminal end, you've got a Stomfo connector. Now Stomfo is the name of a company in Italy, so don't get too worried about that. And the elastic just fits in a small knot on there, and that sheath fits on the end, and it's quite a neat arrangement. It's important to get everything nice and neat, and then you won't get tangles. And on the end is a little tiny hook, and you put the loop of your winder in there and just slide it over, and that secures it. Now on this particular one, it's only gone through one of the sections. I'll just slide that out and show you what I mean. Put that away. That elastic is through the top section. Now I use that for fishing for fish up to the pound mark, and I might use it on still waters or even dace fishing. Grades of elastic are another thing that I'll come on to, but it's held at the other end by another Stomfo bung. So as you can see, the elastic is internal throughout the section. On the larger pole, I've got the elastic going through two sections. I'll pop that back in there. Oops. There's a wind blowing it about a bit. And so instead of having it through the top section, I've got it through the top two sections, and this gives me a lot more elasticity. And I'll be using that today because you can latch onto a 4-pound chub as easy as anything here, and if you've got one of those, just through one section doesn't give you enough elastic. So you've got to have it through the two sections. The other way of attaching to the end of a pole on a flick tip is a little bit different. I'll just slide that up there. I've already got a rig made up on this, but this is a flick tip. You can buy little Stomfo attachments that fit on the end. I don't prefer those because you tend to tangle up. But if you can see on there, it's got a little tiny, like a sleeve. And what I do is I put a loop on the line, slide it over to the sleeve, and then anchor it off. And then pull it up, and that secures it. Just waggle that around there a few times so it follows the curve of the carbon tip. And then on the other end, I've got a longer piece of silicone, which just, try and show you that, it's a little bit finicky, just fits on the end, like so. And that's nice on the end of the pole. So that's two methods of attaching line to your pole end. I'll pop that one out of the way. Right, other things that have come along in those 10 years are Styl Leads. Now these are very, very small lead weights, ever so small, as you can see. Now you're probably wondering how to put those on. Well, they come, if you can buy them, they come with a set of pliers like this, and all you do is you make sure that the styles are upside down, and with these pincers place the pincers on top of the style pick one up like that, put it onto the line and just squeeze it on. Now it seems very, very delicate, but with a little bit of practice you can do this quite easily. And the beauty of Styls is it allows the line and the bait to go through the water much slower and naturally, and you can catch fish on the drop and make the hook bait emulate the loose feed offerings. So these are very important, and I prefer these now to the standard split shot. The largest size you can use is a number 12, and as you can see that one's empty. That's because I use those the most. You can get backups on these in little containers, and so I tend to top up with those as well. That's equivalent to a number 8 split shot. When you're fishing Styl Leads, as I normally do on the Trent, it's for loose feeding, and you can take the fish on the drop, and you can also move the styles so that you can put them all together, so that you get the weight taking it all down in one lump and getting through the little bit fish on the top. I think we're going to get a few problems with dace today. I've seen a lot of them moving on the top, so if that happens and I'm fishing on the styles, I'll just slide them all together about so far away from the hook, and hopefully that'll take the bait quickly through that top feeding fish. The other way of weighting a float up on the pole is to use Olivettes, and there's a couple of sorts that I use. These, since the lead shot ban, are made out of tungsten, and they're very, very heavy for the size. If I'm fishing light pole rigs rather, then I'll use these. If I'm fishing heavier pole rigs, the one I like to use is this flexible tungsten shot. And what you do is you cut pieces off that, slide it onto your line and stop it with a bristle of a float. Now the thing I like about this particular one, especially in the heavier floats when you're using anything up to 3 gram, is it's like a composite of tungsten filings and rubber. And if you're swinging a fish in and it does happen to come off, it'll hit your pole and it will bounce off, whereas your conventional tungsten ones or the old lead ones will pierce into the pole. And if you're swinging big fishing like you do in Ireland, hybrids up to a pound, the speed at which the Olivette hits the pole is tremendous. So I do prefer to use that type of Olivette. Another item of tackle that I've found a brilliant advantage to my fishing is a game made by Stomfo. I can't even begin to pronounce the name of this one, but what it is, it's a disgorger on one end, although the likes of which I've never seen. I wouldn't advocate using that in a million years, it's far too big. But on the other end, the business end, it's got a very, very sharp spike, and I mean sharp. You've got to be careful with these. Now that is for getting tangles out of your rigs, and all you do is, if you've got a little knot or a wind knot, you poke that spike into the knot as it's going through the skin there, and then slide the line up over that, and it opens all the knot out, and you just put it onto those little tiny lugs there, and then you can get the tangles out much easier. It's a brilliant tool, and it also doubles up for getting the varnishes you tend to accumulate in the eyes on the pole floats. So that's a really nice tool, and I use that a lot. Hopefully I don't get too many tangles, but that is the business for it. Many things have come out on the market in the last 10 years, and there's been a big crossover from the English style fishing onto the continental scene and vice versa. This has had a lot to do with the fact that England have won the World Championships 3 times using the running line method. And I'm sure that a lot of people use poles now and will benefit from what I've got to tell you during the course of this fishing session. I'll move on now to floats. There's millions of floats, not just pole floats, but wagglers and stick floats on the market. And the basic rule to follow for river fishing or still water fishing is, if you fish in a river, to use an inverted teardrop, and you can hold back without the float riding up out of the water. If you're fishing on still waters or very, very slow moving rivers, as this is today, then you'll use a teardrop shaped float, and you can see the difference between those two quite markedly. I use lots of different types of pole floats, but you only actually need 2 basic shapes, and then it comes down to using different weights for different conditions. All the floats are made up on winders. You can either put the float on the line and put your shot onto it, or you can use this other gadget I've got here. The next piece of tackle that I want to have a look at is again made by Stonfo, the Italian company, and it's called a Dosapiombo. You'll have to forgive me pronunciation on that. But what it is it's a small podium that's made out of plastic, and inside there, as you can hear rattling, is some lead weights. Now that's accurately balanced, so it's neutral in the water. And what you do is you place the float that you're going to put on your winder in a little tiny clamp there, and that just neatly clips in, and then you place your weights on that platform there. I'll show you one, I'll set it up. All you need is an old Coke bottle. I'll try and put some there where it won't spill all over me. Alright, and you drop that in there. It's just a Coke bottle with the top cut off. And then I'm going to have a guess at how many Styl Leads this will take. I'm going to use number 12 styles, which are equivalent to number 8 shot. I'll sprinkle a few in there just to see. And that's not enough. It's a bit trial and error, but you can work off the manufacturer's suggested shotting, although I don't take that too literally. See, that's too much now. Now rather than tip all that out and to get the float out and the weight, there's a little knack that I've learnt to get it out, and all you do is you just twizzle the water around in the bottle, and if there's not too much lead on that float, it should magically come to the top, like so. I'm glad that worked. I'll take a couple more off and try it again. Now what I want to do is I want to get the float so it's just subsurface on the actual body of the float, so that the bristle is doing all the work. This makes it very, very sensitive. I'm going to try one more number 12 on there, if we don't get blown away. And that's just about perfect. Can you see it doesn't quite want to come up to the float, or nearly, but the bristle's sticking out. And if you do get a bite, there's hardly any resistance at all. And for shy biting roach on hard days, that's how you want to set it up. If I'm fishing on rivers and it's pulling a little bit harder on a bigger float, I'll probably overshot it by a number 12 style, or maybe a couple of 12 styles. So there you go, that's how to set your floats up. And it's quite simply a case of tipping the Styl Leads out, and incidentally you can use Olivettes the same way, and then putting them on your line with the style pincers. Now line's quite important when you're using long line methods, and I find it better to use a pre-stretched line. Maxima, which I use for a lot of my feeder work, tends to be very, very stretchy, and if you are fishing 8-9 metres to hand and you've got a decent sized fish on, not only have you got the elastic stretching out, but believe you me, the line stretches quite remarkably. I'll pop these out of the way and I'll show you the lines that I use. Pop that down there. Without question, Bay of Purlon is probably the most popular line in the UK. This breaking strain is 1.7, and if I'm fishing anything around pound, 12 ounce hook lengths, that's the line I'll use. It's very, very good on diameter, which again is important, but it hardly stretches, and that's what I consider to be a pre-stretched line. So if you do swing a big fish in, it's all on your elastic and not on your line. The other one that I use is a new type of line, Drennan do one called Double Strength, and this is one called Ultima Extra. And these are even more pre-stretched than the one I've just shown you. They tend to be very, very good for long line work, but I don't care for them so much on the running line because they're very brittle. Although if you pull it nice and steadily, they're strong. A quick sharp yank like that and it'll snap. So I tend to use these more when I'm fishing on the pole. That's a 2.4 breaking strain, but it's only 6/1000 of an inch diameter, which is a very good diameter for that kind of breaking strain line. The less diameter, the better the presentation of the float. There's a boat coming up now. We'll probably get one or two of these during the course of the fishing. It's very popular with pleasure cruisers up and down here, but it doesn't seem to bother the fishing too much. In fact, if anything, it probably stirs them up a bit. I talked earlier on about elastic. And these are the types of elastic that are available on the market today. Two main ones actually, and they're both French. This one's called Zim, and that goes in 8 grades from 1 right through to 8, 1 being the finest. And I'd use that if I'm fishing for small roach and small skimmers, anything actually up to about £1. That would go through the one top section like I told you before. But the favourite elastic that I use, again it's French, and this comes in colour coding as opposed to number coding, and this ranges from a white coding, which is the finest, equivalent to a Zim number 1, right the way through to a yellow coding, which is that one there. And as you can see, from the Zim number 1 to the equivalent Zim number 8, there's a lot of difference. I find that this white elastic is far more durable than the Zim, and that's important when you're catching a lot of fish in competitions. Today I'm going to be using a green coated elastic which has a breaking strain of about £2, but don't let that worry. If you get a £2 fish on it, won't pose any problems. Let's just have another quick look at the tips and talk about that in detail. Pop that one out of the way. That's a flick tip, we don't need that one today. These here are like cartridges really, and these contain the very fine elastic. That's a red coated elastic, and it's set up so that it always retracts inside the pole section or the flick tip. The other one I've got there is a green coated, and you can see the difference in those two just about. One's heavier than the other, and the green one, I'll use that even on the rivers when I want to catch roach and skimmers, but it'll handle a big chub as well. But if I definitely know I'm on bigger fish, then that is the rig I'd use going through 2 of the sections, anchored at the second section, and that's a green coating again. But it's important to tension the elastic up, otherwise you get the effect, and you've probably seen it yourselves, where the elastic hangs out the end of the pole. Now, apart from looking unsightly, this has the effect where you can get tangles very easily. Now there's 2 ways you can overcome this. Firstly, by tightening the elastic up on the bung, which is fine, and by secondly, using one of these lubricants that are readily available on the market. And it's a silicone based product, and all you do is drop a little spot, well that's a lot, don't put that much on the end of the elastic and pull it through, and you'll find that with tensioning the elastic does help lubricate it. When you've had a big fish on, that elastic wants to go straight back in there. So that's the tips talked about, and that's the elastic talked about. Before I get fishing, I want to tell you a little bit about bait, what I'll be using today. Now Twyford responds to a lot of different baits. In the summer months, the castor and hemp works particularly well, and also you can catch on tears. I've not brought any tears with me today, but if the roach are having a go, I might even nick a piece of this on the hook. When you do get the roach going on seed baits, there's no finer bait to use, and you'll find you can get good quality roach in areas where you've not seen them before. I'll be loose feeding the hemp in conjunction with casters, and these are very, very good quality casters, and it's important to get good quality bait. There's no substitute for good bait, and they're nicely turned casters. I'll be putting a little bit of water on them. If you leave them exposed to the air too long, they go darker as they try to turn towards a fly, and then they'll float, and that's no good for what we want. As I know there's a few bream in this area, as I say, 21's the best bream peg on this stretch, they may well have moved up. They've had a little bit of rain come in the river, and they could well move up into this peg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock a little bit of groundbait up, and what I'm going to use again is the Eynde range, which is probably the most popular one in use today on the circuit. I'm going to use Special, which is a cloud, and Vigva, which is for still slow moving waters. Probably one packet of that to half a packet of that, and I'll put a little nugget of that in probably every 4 or 5 runs down, and this will help to stimulate the fish and get them into my peg. And if there's any bream there or skimmers, then they'll have a go at that too. Finally, my maggots. Now these again are Terry Dorman's maggots. We call them Dorman's donkeys in Nottingham. Excellent quality bait, and I like to get them as fresh as I can. The fresher they are, the bigger they are, and the softer they are. And if you're after catching roach, it's important to have very soft bait. Now these are bronze maggots with a few reds mixed in, and if I'm fishing caster and hemp loose feed, I always like to try the red maggot on the hook. Don't ask me why it works, but red maggot in conjunction with caster seems to be a very good bait. Now I've got this powdery substance on my bait, consists of maize flour and another additive from the Eynde range called Tranquil, and that smells beautiful. You could almost eat it yourself. It's like a maize powder, and you just sprinkle that on top of the bait, and that gives it a lovely smell and attracts them fish into your peg. Right, let's get down and get some fishing done. Well, we've eventually got down to fishing, and as you can see the weather's changed for the worse. Got quite a little soak in here. I've had a few runs down. There's plenty of dace knocking about. Before we go on to the fishing, let's have a look at this setup I've got here. Got some right contraptions. I'm going to keep on fishing for a while and try and mix the two together, a bit of fishing and a bit of explanation about the layout. I'll just put that out there, fire some bait in, and then we're off. Now it's most important when you're fishing to get everything set out neatly, whether you be pole fishing, feeder fishing, or fishing the waggler or stick float. And these days I like all the creature comforts. And if you look down at the bottom, what my box is placed on is what's called a continental stand, and these first originated in Holland and Germany, and they've been using them for years and years. I obtained this one from a raft lad about 5 years ago, and it cost me £120 then. Since then there's a lot of different models come on the market, some made out of aluminium, and you can pick them up for less than £60. On the right hand side, immediately to hand, let's hold that a minute, is the groundbait bowl. Now I was going to use the sponge just to dampen it off because it was a little bit earlier on, it was very, very warm and it's starting to dry out. Well, it looks like I needn't bother with this rain. And what I keep doing is plopping a little bit of that in every 3rd or 4th run down, and it gives a nice cloud into the water, attracting fish into it. I've mixed up the mix that I said before, and it's got a little bit of grilled hemp as well. They have been catching fish on the seed baits, although it's cooled off and maybe that one won't work now. I'll put a couple of nuggets in there. This is attached to a stand, and I've got it whenever I need it, just there. Just put that out, might get a bite while I'm talking to you. On top of the stand I've got my seat box, and if you can see on the bottom of the seat box I've got these legs attached. This is a new system that's been developed, although there are quite a few models on the market today, and it's called an octopus system. The reason is you can put so many attachments to it. I suppose it's like an octopus, but the name derives from the octagonal extruded sections that they use to make up the unit. Just to the left of the groundbait you can see these two rubberized attachments, and these fit onto the main legs, and what they're for is to rest my pole in if I want to turn around and do something, or if I just want to chuck a bit of groundbait in, or generally have a waddle around the back there. But the idea is to keep everything nice and neat around you, so you shouldn't have to get off your box at any stage. Underneath this attachment we've got a bank stick that fits onto the keep net. Now it's very important to have the keep net close to hand, more so in match fishing, but even if you're pleasure fishing it's handy to have it there, so when you do catch a fish you just drop it straight in the net. That covers the right hand side of my equipment. You'll probably see up the back of me is what's called a pole roller, that V-shaped affair up there. Now I'm fortunate today because I've got a nice bit of bank there, and I can, if I wanted to put any sections on, slide this pole quite comfortably up there. You couldn't actually wish for a better peg than this. But on some days when the bank's full of nettles and a lot of brambles and stuff, you use the pole roller to roll the pole onto it. It's self-explanatory really, and that makes a nice smooth action. I've just done that to demonstrate, but I'll be using the grass if I need to do that. Let me pop that back onto the pole rest. On the left hand side of me, this contraption here is a catapult mounted onto the same octopus frame, and all it's for basically is so that I can feed using one hand on the pole. I'll just demonstrate that for you now. If you're fishing with the pole between your legs, which is the most comfortable way to fish because you can nip the pole with your knees and hold it like so, or you can just balance the pole under your arm, under your hands, then it leaves one arm free, or one hand free, to fire the loose feed out. Now once you've got the knack of this, you can do it without looking, and just keep firing that in and then fishing, so that's perfect. It's in a little side tray which comes with these boxes. There's 3 or 4 companies make these boxes, polypropylene, excellent value for money. I don't think you'd ever need to buy another one if you've bought one. There are much more expensive boxes on the market, and imported ones from the continent, but around about £40, I think this is the one for me. Added onto that the legs, and you've got all you need for a good day's fishing, a good day's comfortable fishing. Immediately to my left I've got all the bait, the casters, the hemp seed, and the maggots, which are getting gradually wetter and wetter. You always know when you've had a good downpour because you've got maggots crawling all over the place. On these Drennan bait waiters, which is what this is, there's a little spare compartment, and I put all my bits and bobs on there. The plummet, that stonefo unit I mentioned before, which is for undoing tangles and a disgorgia, and then 2 or 3 extra rigs that I might need for the day's fishing. And then the last item, not least, is the landing net. Now I've placed that on a bank stick to my left. That's nice and easy to reach. If I've got a fish on and I'm swinging it in, just reach for the landing net. Now this landing net in particular, you'll notice, has got an angle to it. Now this is something I copied off John Dean many years ago, and the idea behind it is, as you place the landing net into the water, it goes completely with the flatness of the water, so that when you land a fish it's just straight up and it's in. Now I don't know if it's making that much difference, but I think it's right, and if Deanie does it, that's good enough for me. When I've landed the fish, just pop it straight onto the rod rest and away we go. Nice, neat, comfortable, ain't got to worry about anything, where to look for it, I know where it all is. So let's get down to some fishing. Well, I've already plumbed the depth, and it's about 9 or 10 foot, and I'm fishing just slightly off the bottom. But you can see I'm fishing a pole at a length of about 9 metres, or 9.5 metres. Now there's something I've not mentioned to you before we started fishing, and that is the dangers of using these long poles. There's been a lot of tragic accidents in the last 2 or 3 years with people touching overhead power cables, and I would advise very strongly that when you do take your pole, whether it be a glass pole or a carbon pole, out of your rod holder, that you have a good look round you. Look up in the air, have a good look round you, because these cables can sometimes look like telephone wires. And I had a very close miss fishing Newton solely on the Upper Trent once. I was fishing 10-11 metres, and I just happened to look up. It was drizzling and it was running straight across the top of me. Now I was lucky, some people ain't been as lucky as me. And the thing is, even if you think the pole's a good 10-15 feet away from these cables, when it's damp, or when it's even slightly damp, they can track down, the electricity can track down and shoot straight through the pole. There's some people being killed and some people lost arms and legs. It's just horrendous. Try and avoid it. Always look up as soon as you get your pole out the hold door and have a good scan round and at the back of you and make sure there's no cables. If there's some cables there, fish somewhere else. And if you're fishing a match, don't bother fishing the pole. It's just not worth it. Now, fishing 9.5 metre standing, probably making it look quite easy. In actual fact, what you've got to bear in mind is I've been fishing the pole now for over 10 years. And it's taken me a long time to get used to fishing this length. When I first fished a long pole in Ireland, if I can get hold of this thing that's flying about, I had some terrible times adjusting, even on the old Pro Carbon. And I can remember on one occasion, I was fishing on the Queen Elizabeth Road, and it was very, very windy. And I hooked this roach, it was about 12 ounces. Went to swing it in, missed the roach completely. It went up behind me, landed on the road, and I spent the next 5 minutes diverting traffic to get away from the roach. It's as silly as that really, but once you've used one a few times, you do get the measure of it. And if you've not got a 10 or 11 metre pole, you can still actually fish the pole method for anything up to 7 or 8 metres. This peg's 9 foot deep. And it's really, the flow's in the middle, so I'm having to fish this length of pole. If I got some flow at my feet, and it was only 5 or 6 foot deep, then I'd have no problems fishing 5 or 6 metres, even 7 metres at the most. I've had some terrific weights fishing on the Trent, and I've only fished 6 metres to hand maximum. But today I'm fishing that a little bit longer. You can see the elastic probably coming out of there as I pull this. That's the internal one I mentioned. And I'm fishing styles down the line. That's probably difficult for you to see, but take it from me, there's styles down there. All equi-spaced down the line, so they get a nice on-the-drop presentation. Behind me there's another pole, and that's the put-over pole. And I've got that set up with a big Olivette on it. It's about a 2.5 gram float, which may seem a bit excessive for this steady moving water. But it gets the bait down quickly through those dace that are picking anything off on the drop. I've had a few dace early on, and I've got a feeling if I plug away at it, I'll catch a few roach as well. But in essence, the method is just running the float off the end of the pole. Now, how far out you decide to fish can be dictated by the angle that you hold the pole. I'm fishing as far out as I really can on that. But if I want to fish it a little bit closer, what I do is bring the pole nearer to me and then let the float settle. Now, when I'm doing that, there's a lot more line running to the float. And if I follow that float right the way down my peg, I can virtually cover 15 yards, which is about an average length peg on the Trent. Some are 20 yards if you're lucky. So I'm not fishing to the extreme length of the pole, otherwise I'd have to be pushing the pole out to follow the float. So this is a nice way of fishing the length of your peg. And one drawback with fishing the pole is you sometimes can only get so far down your peg, and a little bit further is where the bigger fish are. So if you do keep a little bit closer in, you'll find you can cover your peg a lot better. And this feels like a better fish. This feels like a better fish, this. Oh, straight to the top. I just braid that caster in so I don't seem to have concentrated. My laggy's not coming out, that's a bit unusual. Normally a bit scrappier than this. Just put the pole vertical, swing it towards me, there we go. Well, he didn't really have much of a say-so for himself. Not a big fish. 4 or 5 ounce. Nice roach though, nevertheless. Just pop him in the water. I'm going to try the caster buried again. It's just a case of falling these roach into not knowing there's a hook on the end. It's bad enough with a line. Let's see if we can catch a fish. Incidentally, if you're wondering why I've got my sunglasses on when it's raining, I need these to see me float. I've got poor vision problems. You'll notice every time I put the float out, I'm putting plenty of bait in. In the summer months you've got to keep the bait going in, and this is where some people fall down. And we've got the RAF coming over again. I've not been concentrating on my fishing while I've been talking to you, but let's see if we can get one. I've had a few bites right, there we go. Oh, that's a better fish. A lot of dace in here, and a couple of 3 runs down earlier I had this big fish, and I'm sure it was a roach getting on for a pound, and as they normally do, it shed the hook. Here we go. It's nice and smoothly. I think I'll net this one. It's not a big fish, but the danger is when you get one of these fish and try and swing it in, if it does come off in mid-air, you'll experience the worst tangles you've ever seen in your life with these styles. There we go. Pop that back on there, nice and to hand. Get this disgorge at the back of my ear. There we go. Oops! Well, I'm glad it's not a match. He had better idea, didn't want to go in that keep net. Let's have another cast. It's just a simple underhand sweep that needs some perfecting. As I say, it's taken me a long time to be able to fish a pole like this. There are other ways of casting out. You can swing it round your head as well. But the wind's quite kind, although it's scudding through. And I can do this underhand flick. But it's important to lay all the styles out nice and neatly on the water, else you do get tangles again. On the next rundown I'll show you a different way to cast the float out. But I often get asked when I'm fishing, how do you get floats less than a gram, fishing with styles, out to where you want to fish them? And it's just simply a knack, really. Comes with experience. That was a bite and missed it. I'm fishing double caster now. So I bumped a roach earlier on, and I've had some better quality days. I've put the maggot on and I'm really struggling to get through the tiny fish. If I do continue to get this problem, what I'll do is I'll put the Olivette Rig on and I'll show you that one. Nice, 2 nice casters on there. See, any self-respecting roach can resist that. Nice flick out. I'll put the bait in normal way, double-handed. So I use that more or less in competition when you're putting a lot of bait out. We're just feeding it nice and steadily today. There's a lot of good quality roach in here. I've had them well over a pound. It's just That's a nice, could be a dace, it's hard to tell really. You've got to be very careful with these dace. They're not big fish, but they just know how to get rid of that hook at the last minute. I normally swing that one in, but I'll give it a whirl. If it comes off, we're all in trouble. There you go. See, the caster's just both blown up the line there. There you go. So keep the bait going in. I can remember my daddy when he used to coach me on the junior matches. He used to say, keep that bait going in. Keep that bait going in. Taught me well though. You don't forget things like that when you got a sore ear. It's still raining, but it's getting a little bit brighter. We might even get some sun out in a minute. Just take it right to the end of my peg, see if we can't just tempt one of them better quality fish hanging off the bait there. That's the other cast that I've been meaning to tell you about. It's just a case of swinging it round the head. That's probably an easier one to start off with actually than the swinging it underarm. I'll just plop a bit of groundbait in on top, that might just help matters a little bit. It's very cloudy, that is. The idea is to draw the fish into the cloud and dart in and out and take the hook as well. It's almost stopped raining. Yeah, something about having a little dig at that. And this feels like a better fish. Oh, this looks like a... Just swing that one in. Yon skimmer. Well, that's a baby one. I know there's some bigger ones about here, but just shows. I'll get that hook out. Nice little skimmer there. Put him back to grow into a bigger one. On the Trent at the moment there's an explosion with hybrids, and you catch them on caster and groundbait all the time. It's nice to see them in the Avon, you don't see so many here. Full of dace, I mean it's one of the best venues for dace probably in the country. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that one up behind me now. I've caught a skimmer, that's not the reason why I'm changing. I'm going to pop that one back up the bank and have a look at this other pole I've got set up with the Olivette Rig. If you did start catching a few skimmers on a Styl rig, then you'd automatically change to a heavier rig like this, because when they are there you want to get the bait down as quickly as possible away from them marauding dace. Now the difference between this rig and the other rig I had on the first pole, apart from it being a much heavier rig, instead of having the weight distributed evenly along the length of the line underneath the float, the bulk of the load is taken in one of these Olivettes. It's the combination of tungsten filings and rubber, and as I say, I like those because if you do swing a big fish in and it comes off, you can hear that, it's not hard at all and it'll just bounce off your pole section. If you've got an expensive pole, you know, sections can be anything up to £100 plus, and you can't be damaging them regularly. So we've got the bulk of the load in that Olivette. You can use the tungsten ones, but for reasons I've just described I prefer to use that on the bigger floats. And then underneath that we've got two 12s, a single 12 and then another single 12 there. Now I can alter the depth on that up and down, and I've got a small piece of float bristle just stopping that Olivette inside. I'll just move these around just to show you. The nice thing about Styl Leads is that they do move very smoothly on the line, and they distribute the actual pressure along a bigger piece of line than the split shot. So on finer lines such as a pound lines and 1/7 lines, they're better. Now coming down to the business end, you'll notice that the hook length is only 8 inches long. Now I never ever put shots on my hook length. The only day I would probably do that is if I couldn't get a bite and I was getting beat at the next peg, and I might think that he's putting a shot really close to his hook. But other than that, even on running lines, I use the hook length with no shots on. Quite simply because you've only got to nick the line with the shot and take a bit of the diameter off it, and you've reduced the hook length considerably. I'd much rather have short hook lengths than have number 10s or number 8s strung up a yard of line, which a lot of top matchmen do. That's up to them. I'm quite happy to fish like this. I think the fish can see enough of the bait there without worrying about the rest of the main line up here. I'm going to fish this just to show you the difference between the presentation and on the styles, and really speaking, this is for when I'm getting through the dace, or if I was fishing for bream and I knew they was having a go. This actual rig is one I used in Spain last year in the World Club Championships, and it's not the same breaking strain line because we was using 5 pound main line there and a 4 pound hook length, but this particular float has caught me 31 kilo of carp in a 3-hour competition, so he's done a bit of damage. Let's put a maggot on for a change. I'll just cast this one out for you. Get some more bait out. Beautiful. Now it's stopped raining and then birds twittering away. Nice job if you can get it. Come on. Just had a little bit of a nudge then. That's a better fish. Know what this is? I think it's a chub. That laggy's coming out. Ooh. It's a big dog roach. I had one of these earlier on and I lost it. It'll take me time. Here we go. The laggy soaks up all the power of the fish, but they're such strong fish, roach are probably pound for pound the best fighting fish other than carp. Maybe barbel, I suppose, but it's got about 3 foot of laggy out there. There's no point in me bullying it because they're the best hook shedders in the business, these are. Just nice and steady. Nice and steady, come on. The line's singing, I love it. There we go. Lovely. I'll put that on the rest. I'll see what we've got. Yeah, that's a beautiful roach. They always get this golden colour when they get to about the pound mark. That's a disgorger on him. There's a lot of these in the Avon. There's some pretty big roach up here, and they catch a lot of them in summer on the seed baits. They're really nice fish. Just pop him in there. Oh, wet me through. That's thanks for you. Well, maybe them roach are just hanging underneath right at the bottom, and this Olivette Rig's getting through the dace. Let's give another go. All excited now, putting them in one-handed. More bait. In fact, I'm getting a bit low on casters. Oopsie daisy. Put that back. Let's reach for me now. There's plenty of fish feeding. Oh, it's not so big. As soon as I hit that fish, it really went off like a rocket, but I don't know what it is, to be honest. Come on. Very strange. That's a... Can't make out whether it's a little chub or a dace. It felt a lot bigger than that. That's a little chub. I'll just throw caution to the wind and swing that one in there. Little pup. That's a nice fish. I always like catching these little chub. They can't half get through some bait. If you've got a shoal of them in your peg, you're busy all day. Much better catch 10 of them than one dog chub. But it's nice to catch the odd dog chub every now and then. I'll pop him in the net. It's encouraging in a fisher to see small chub coming up. It's also a sign that the future's going to be rosy. Check the laggy, and out we go. Keep the bait going in. I just had a bite then and missed it. Must be one of them little dace following it down. The littler fish tend to attract the bigger fish, and it's just a case of whether the bigger fish can get at the bait. They're not boiling on the top like they normally do. Mind you, that hemp takes them down. And that's not a dace. Okay. Ooh, crikey, this ain't it. Feels like a chub to me. It could be a bream, but it's going too strong. I think I can hear a boat coming. This could be a bit dangerous if you don't come out in the middle of the river. Sounds like he might be slowing down for me. It's took me right upstream. Bream just don't go that fast. I would think it's a chub. Come away. He's seen a root or something. You monkey, come away. Right in the side there. I wonder if I've caught this one before at Twyford. Certainly fit. Well, at least he's out there. That was lucky. If it had been in the middle of the river there when that boat went by, that would have been all over. There's sometimes a case when these big boats go by, he's going too fast now, that it stirs the chub up, and I've often chucked in on a waggler, come here, and caught one in the swirls behind the boat. That's a nice fish. Let's be careful with the line. There we go. Well, he seemed to want that caster. Let's well hooked in there. Just put that down for a minute. Get off. And there you are. One of the famous Twyford chub. Not a big fish, maybe £1.12. Certainly put up a good scrap. If I'd got him out before he'd gone in the middle of there and that boat had come by, I would never have seen him. And that's a lovely fish. I'll pop him back in the net. The fin's a bit damaged there, don't seem to bother him too much though. In you go, nice and gently. I like to put him in the keep net, nice and carefully, so don't damage him for another day. But if you heard the line singing down, the wind breeze got up a bit, really made that line sing, playing that chub. You always turn around when you're fishing on matches, if you can hear the competitor next to you's line singing, it always gets you a bit worried. Check the laggy. There we go. Yeah, looks like I'm running out of bait now. I've only got about another half a dozen runs down and that'll be it. I've seemed to done slightly better since I went on the Olivette Rig. Although, when I say that, I've caught better quality fish, but I've not caught so many dace. Fishing up in the water is the best method for the dace. And I've got another fish here, I don't know what this is. It's not a particularly big fish, but it could be a dace or a roach. Yeah, that line's singing. It's a big roach. This one's got a bit more fight about it. Come on. Whoops. I get that pole down there. I like to get it onto the bed of the river and then I just control it nice and lightly. It's still got a fair amount of elastic out there. And that put up a much better scrap than the other one. Little roach, about 5 ounce. Beautiful condition. And it seems like they are coming onto that groundbait a little bit now. There we go. And that's perfect. Nice little red fin. It's a shame I'm running out of bait. As it gets towards dusk down at Twyford, you can all start getting a few roach, and I don't know whether that's because the ultraviolet rays start to fade a bit and the fish can't see the line or the hooks. But fishing in general is a little bit better on an evening. Nice little flick. And it would have been nice to stay on longer, but I've run out of bait. I've only come down for a pleasuring session, and as it stands I've had a decent day. That chub was one out of the blue. They're still topping all over, laughing at me. What they might be doing is they might be coming up for there's an odd caster floating amongst my bait. And this is more like it. If it was a fish in a match, I'd probably give this a lot more stick and try and get it in quicker, but I'm just pleasure fishing, just enjoying it. I'm even going to net him. Another roach. I've had some cracking weights on the pole, particularly on the Trent, but I've won matches down here on the pole, on the island. That's a lovely fish. And really, on that particular day, it was more of a fluke than anything else. There's quite a few things are in match fishing. You start on a method you think's going to win it, and then you end up on another one that you might even have to set up. But on that particular day, I was fishing on the waggler to start with, and I think it was Tom Pickering on the peg below me was catching well on the stick float. And I went on the stick and I couldn't catch him. There was a tree on my left, he was on peg 7 just a bit down there. And he was really giving me a good hiding. The only way I could get around it, the dace moved up my peg, was to set the pole up, and first run down I had a £2 chub, and it just went from there. Finished up winning the match with £17, and there we go. It's just amazing how you can be fishing all that long, and then I bumped a few fish, missed a few bites, and there we go. 3 runs down and 3 roach. And I'm going to just try and swing that one in. Is it beautiful, that? Look at that. Whoops. Not quite perfect. Isn't that a nice fish? Scale perfect. Never been caught before. Right, before I do put the fish back that I've caught today, let's just have a recap on what we've discussed. First of all, we looked at the different types of poles, the telescopic that they use on the continent with the flick tips and the means of attachment, the difference between put-in poles and put-over poles, and the fact that you don't need to buy these expensive poles. You can fish 6 or 7 metre to hand, so you can buy an economical pole and still get the benefits of the method. It's a method that I've found very pleasurable over the years that I've been using it. It's not a difficult method to master, it just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort. Now the thing is with the pole, you must always remember when you get it out your hold all to have a good look up. I can't stress how important that is. I mean, let's be right, there's been enough accidents already. So just have a look round, see if you can see any cables whatsoever. And if you can, either put the pole down or fish somewhere else. I know you can't if you're in a match, but if you're in a match, then I would fish a different method completely. We looked at the Olivette method and the Styl method. We discussed its pluses and minuses. We looked at line diameters, the fact that we use a pre-stretch line for long line fishing. We showed the methods of casting, the underarm method and the swing round method. The importance of good quality bait and the layout of the tackle. Everything's got to be to hand, and this is more important for match fishermen, but I would say for pleasure fishermen alike, this is a key element to good fishing. Also have the pole set up behind you. You've got the pole roller there if we need to use it. I've been a little bit fortunate, I've got a nice bank to pay the pole back on today. The continental stands, which are readily available on the English market now, not so a few years ago. And the leg systems, which you can buy from most retail outlets, plus all their attachments, the pole rests, etc. I hope you enjoyed watching me fish, and I hope you've learned a few things in the meantime. Don't forget about the little Dosapiombo for shotting your pole floats up. It's a very, very handy tool, and that little wrinkle I mentioned about twiddling the water to get the float to come up if you've put too much shot on. All the other bits and bobs you can get from any tackle shop in the UK, so I'd recommend you have a look at them. Let's have a look at my fish. That's it for me today. I'll see you around.